What's up, everyone? It's me, Johnny. I just got done watching the latest UFC fight night, Cannonier against Borralho. We're going to be talking about the main event in addition to all the fights on the main card. Overall, this was a really fun UFC fight night. We had submissions, KOs, TKOs, and of course, that belter of a main event. So let's talk about it all. And by the way, I'm hoping to get Rob tomorrow for a podcast episode, so keep your eyes out for that. But let's get into it. If you enjoy this video and want to see more content from me and MMArcade, please like, subscribe if you're new, with notifications if that's possible. But let's start off with the main event. Caio Borralho defeats Gerald Cannonier by unanimous decision. This was a banger of a fight, man. It was an absolute belter. Both guys put on a big show. Caio Borralho definitely showed and definitely staked his claim to be in the top 5 of that middleweight division. Now, there's every chance he doesn't go to the 5th position. He could go to 6th. The rankings are weird. But because he beat Gerald and Gerald is 5th, I think that does take him to the 5th position. Just like we saw with Dan Hooker defeating Mateusz Gamrot, he took the 5th position and Gamrot dropped down. So I think we might see something similar here. But clearly, Caio Borralho showed that he is hanging with the top contenders in the middleweight division. But Gerald as well, at least until that last round, and we'll talk about that, of course, he looked good. This was a competitive fight. It was back and forth. Gerald still has some real power in his hands, in his hooks, in his combos, but he is starting, I believe, to show his age a little bit. He's starting to take a lot of damage in his fights. We saw that in the Marvel fight, and of course, we saw that in the 5th round of this fight with Borralho. But until that point, he was still looking competitive, and I don't think he's going to suddenly retire. But this might be the start of the decline for Gerald Cannonier, unfortunately, because I really like the guy. I actually was hoping that he might have come away with this one, but still, Borralho showed his worth. He was a really competitive, showed how good he is in the middleweight division. Is he ever going to see a title shot? I don't know. That will be a talking point, by the way, but let's break down this fight by the rounds. First round, Caio came out with those really strong low calf kicks. He even sat Gerald down a couple of times with those kicks. And there was a lot of weirdness in this fight with the canvas. It felt like it was slippery on both sides for both fighters. Gerald was slipping a little bit. Caio was slipping a little bit. And sometimes I thought, are both of them wobbly? But it might have been a combination of them taking shots and also the slipperiness of the canvas. I don't know what was going on there, but in that first round, Gerald did take some damage with those low calf kicks. So combine that with the slippery surface, there are times where he either got sat down or he looked a little bit wobbly. He looked like he couldn't find his footing, but those calf kicks did their job. And as well as that jab, Caio Borralho has a really stiff bloody jab. He was working that all night starting in the first round. It was a really strong start for him. Of course, it was a bit of a lower pace first round, but as you would expect, it was going to be a 5-rounder. They needed to conserve their energy a little bit. But clearly, Caio, to me, had the more damaging strikes. Gerald had his moments in that first round, but I would have given that first round 10-9 to Caio. In the second round, Gerald Cannonier came out strong. He came out swinging. Big hooks, strong jabs as well. As I said, Gerald still has a lot of power, and that goes to show Borralho has a good chin as well. He just wasn't taking no for an answer from Gerald. He did respect his power, of course, but Gerald just couldn't knock him out, and I think a lot of other people in that position could have been knocked out by Gerald's power. So Caio definitely looked a little bit wobbly, and he looked hurt at times in that second round. Again, he was slipping on the canvas, I believe, so it looked a little bit funny. I couldn't tell at times whether he was actually wobbly and whether his legs were going or whether he was just slipping, but still, Gerald was landing really well in that second round. Now, Caio still tried to throw those kicks. He landed a couple, but Gerald's lead right hook and also his jab was really finding its mark, in the second round. He finished strong as well with some big hooks. So I would have said that second round was to Gerald, 10-9, so 19-19 at that stage. It was locked even after the second round. Third round, it started off very close. Caio again was landing the mark with the check hooks, knees, again that jab. Gerald's hooks and also jabs were finding their mark as well. This was a very close round until Caio started picking up the pace and then he landed those combos. There was a right and a straight left, which really hurt Gerald. Gerald was legitimately wobbly at that stage. He was running away, did manage to survive. He was punching his way out of it. And it was a kind of a similar moment to that Nasruddin Imavov fight. And I was like, don't call the fight, let Gerald fight out of it, otherwise he'll be real pissed off. And he managed to survive, and we could have seen that in that Nasruddin fight, but now we'll never know. I still thought it was an okay stoppage in that previous fight. But anyways, Gerald did survive. Clearly that third round went to Caio, so that was 10-9 to Caio. At that stage, I had it 29-28 to Caio. Then the fourth round, this was probably the closest round of the fight. So both were trading really nicely to start the round. Gerald definitely recovered from that moment in the third round. There was a big left from Cannonier, which completely busted Caio's eye, and you saw that at the end of the fight. It looked really, really nicely, but also Caio was landing nicely with his jabs and with his straights. Now, Caio did technically on paper outland Gerald in the fourth round, but personally, I was leaning more towards Gerald winning that round. I know that it was very close. It was a pick 'em 50-50. If you're calling that round, the fourth round for Caio, I completely get it. If you call it for Gerald, I completely get it. And even the judges were split on that round. Personally, for me, I thought that left that busted his Caio's eye was the biggest moment, was the most damaging strike in that round. I thought Gerald did a little bit more in the fourth. So I would have given it 10-9 to Gerald. So for me, my scoring, it would have been 38-38 heading into the fifth round. But it didn't even get that controversial. The fifth round was all Caio. It was a 10-8 round. Like initially I was like, was it 10-8? Was it 10-9? I wasn't too sure, but thinking back on it in hindsight, it was a clear 10-8 and all judges gave it a 10-8 to Caio Borralho. So again, just like the start of the fourth round, they were both trading. It was back and forth. Caio, though, started to really get that higher output in there. Caio had this, what was it? It was the 1-2 right straight and the left hook, which really hurt Gerald. It really bloody put Gerald on his ass. He didn't know where he was, and there was big ground and pound, big elbows. At that stage, I said, Caio's taking this fight. Even if Gerald manages to recover, I didn't know he could do enough in the end of that fifth round to somehow take it, and at least in my eyes, potentially pip that fight. At that stage, it was gone. And then especially once that submission was cinched in, Gerald was like, I don't think he was actually close to being submitted, but it just was not a good look. It was effective grappling. This was the definition of effective grappling. So when you combine that and with that left hook that sat Gerald down, it just did not look good for Gerald. By the end of it, he was spent. So whether you give this a 10-9 or 10-8, I think it was a 10-8 to Caio. So clearly, Caio won that fight 48-46. Now, when you look at the scorecards, one judge did give it 48-46, but two of the other judges gave it a 49-45 in favor of Caio because they scored that fourth round in particular in Caio's favor, which I totally got. So in the end, it wasn't controversial. Caio Borralho defeats Gerald Cannonier by a unanimous decision. Now, I want to talk about Gerald first before I jump to talking about Caio and what he might do next in the middleweight division. I still thought, as I mentioned, until that fifth round, that Gerald looked solid, right? He still has power, but after that fight, and especially after the Imavov fight, so when you combine those two together, he's starting to take some real damage in his fights. Yes, that combo in the fifth round looked strong, but I don't know if old Gerald would have taken that damage like he did now at age 42. You know what I mean? It really hurt him. He was completely out of it, and it didn't look like the craziest combo in the world. You know what I mean? So I think old Gerald would have been in there a little bit more than Gerald of today, unfortunately. So I do worry that he might be on his way out. He's not going to retire. I don't think he should retire, but he is starting to show his age a little bit. I don't think Gerald is ever going to make his way to the title. I know that he said he really wanted to, and maybe in an alternate universe, that fight against Imavov isn't called and he manages to win that fight. But we'll never know now. He now has 2 losses, and I think he's probably going to be on his way out, maybe after a fight or two, especially as he gets to 41 years old and 42 years old. So, but he still looks pretty good. He looks better than a lot of other 40-year-olds in the UFC, that is for sure. But now let's talk about Caio. Caio really proved that he belongs in that top echelon, the upper echelon of the middleweight division. Now, is he a genuine title contender? That's a different discussion. Now, he looked really good against Cannonier, don't get me wrong, but you put him in there against a Dricus, you put him in there against a Rob, even against an Israel. I don't know, man. I don't know if Borralho is a genuine title contender, and I still believe he needs another win to be in that conversation. I just don't see him beating someone like Dricus du Plessis. I really don't. Like, Dricus is a dog, man, and I think he ragdolls him a little bit because there wasn't really any takedown attempts from either side in this fight, but Dricus will throw Caio Borralho to the ground, in my personal opinion, and he has some strong punches as well. So, yes, he's top 5 rank worthy, absolutely, but title contender, I think I need to see a little bit more from Caio Borralho. And then speaking of, he did actually call out Dricus du Plessis at the end of the fight. this was a dumb call out, man. They keep talking about how you have your moments when you have a really good win, especially against a top 5 ranked dude. You have your moment to call out a good fighter, right? Something that makes sense, a matchup that makes sense on paper, that gets you closer to the title shot. Don't call out the champion. That's stupid. You know what's happening in the middleweight division. Sean Strickland is probably going to get that title shot if Dana, it is to be believed, right? Because he's the number 1 contender and he had a close fight with Dricus. And then you have the winner of Khamzat and Rob, right? Clearly they're ahead. There's too many people ahead. Like the winner of that fight and also Sean Strickland, there are too many people ahead for Caio Borralho to be getting that title shot after beating Jared Cannonier. In my opinion, going 5 rounds with Jared Cannonier and knocking out Paul Craig doesn't give you the title shot. He still needs, in my opinion, at least one more win. And speaking of, I think him versus Israel Adesanya could actually be a very, very good fight. I think that's the one to make next. They both just fought. Obviously, Israel just lost to Dricus. He wants to stay in the middleweight division. He still wants to go after people's heads and everything that he said. So I actually think him against Caio Borralho is going to be a good fight. And in my opinion, that would prove that Caio Borralho deserves a title shot against Dricus or whoever's the champion at that stage. You could also have Caio Borralho fight the winner of Imavov and Allen, and I assume that Nasruddin would win that fight. So see who the genuine contender is between Imavov and Caio Borralho. That would be really good. Possibly as well, the loser of the Rob Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev fight. There's a lot of options there. I just don't think a fight against Dricus Super C for the title is the right call to make by any means, right? So let me know what you think in the comments below about that fight and about Caio Borralho calling out Dricus Du Plessis. But let's go down the rest of the card in the co-main. Tabatha Ricci defeats Angela Hill via unanimous decision. Look, I thought this was a very fun fight. It was incredibly high-paced, very competitive, a lot of striking. I think technically on paper, when it comes to significant strikes, Hill actually outlanded and outstruck Ricci, but clearly in the eyes of the judges, Ricci's strikes were more damaging, they were more impactful. Though to be honest, I thought the fight could have been given to either fighter. It was very close, flip of a coin type of fight, 50-50, but ultimately the judges gave it to Ricci, which I'm not unhappy about, right? It's not a robbery or anything like that by any means, but I will say this, I wasn't too impressed with the striking display. Don't get me wrong, it was a fun fight to watch. It was very competitive, but there wasn't that much power behind most, if not all of those strikes, right? Not much damage landed. Neither fighter looked like they were getting wobbled or knocked out at any stage. So it was fun to watch. It was very high paced, as I mentioned. But in terms of the striking display, I wasn't too impressed. Next up, we got Ryan Loder TKOing Robert Valentin. This was a very fun fight to watch. An incredibly high level display of wrestling and grappling from both sides, right? So my wife was watching this fight with me, and coincidentally, she always happens to catch the really bad wrestling heavy and grappling heavy fights where they're not doing much with the position. And in her words, not mine, they're cuddling a lot, right? And they're hugging a lot. But even she said with this fight that this was good to watch. They were wrestling a lot and they were grappling a lot, but they were actually doing something with the position. There was a lot of reversals, a lot of submission attempts. So this was impressive to watch. I actually really enjoyed this, and I was hoping that it was going to go the distance because you don't often see these awesome back and forth displays and exchanges when it comes to wrestling and grappling. This was awesome to watch. But ultimately, in the second round, Loder manages to secure in that crucifix position. And then he just landed elbow after elbow after elbow after elbow. It was brutal to watch. I thought Robert could have been knocked out at any stage, and I don't know how he managed to survive because the ref ultimately called the fight and Robert technically wasn't knocked out cold, but I thought it was the right decision because he was not getting out of that position. He tried a couple of times. He really tried to push out and get out of the crucifix, but he just couldn't. And because of that, he kept getting copped with elbows in the head. And I thought it was the right call because eventually he would have been knocked out or suffered brain damage or a heavy concussion if he didn't already suffer a concussion. So this was a fun fight to watch. Ultimately, Ryan Loder wins. I still hope that Robert stays in the UFC. This was a tough finale fight, by the way, in the middleweight division. So I think we're going to see good things from Ryan Loder, but ultimately Robert Valentin loses, but I still hope that he stays in the UFC because his wrestling and his grappling was on point. He just got caught in the crucifix and it happens. Next up, Mairon Santos KOs Kaan Ofli. This was also a tough finale fight in the featherweight division. Santos looked really good, man. He's a sniper, man. Strong front kicks, strong calf kicks. He was potting in shots from distance. like body shots. He's very fast. He was very fluid. Ofli was clearly struggling with the distance. He didn't really manage to land much. And then obviously in the second round, knocks Ofli out cold. Santos, man, he missed with the right hook, and then he came in with a left on the button, on the chin. Ofli got knocked out cold, brother, and I felt bad. I felt it in my chest because this is a fellow Aussie, and I was hoping that he could get the win. It would have been a nice moment, but unfortunately, Santos was just too good with his striking. That was beautiful, man. Now, at the end, I think Bisping said he kind of looked like Anderson Silva. Don't get me wrong. I was thinking that at the back of my head, but I didn't say it out loud because I think it's a bit too early in his career to be making comparisons like that. But he looked good. It was impressive. He knocks him out cold, and I enjoyed watching this fight. Next up, Michael Morales TKOs Neil Magny. Morales started this fight off very strong with those calf kicks. So in response to that, Magny attempted to get in with a clinch and just slowly drag down Morales. And I thought he was close to doing it. But then out of nowhere, Morales comes out with that spinning back elbow, gets out of the position, rocks Magny, and then he kept working the ground and pound, and the fight was called. I didn't expect him to get into that position with a spinning back elbow. It was beautiful to watch. It was pristine, man. Love this performance. This was another good fight, though I do feel bad for Neil Magny. And finally, Gerald Meerschaert submits Edmen Shahbazyan. What an incredible comeback victory from Meerschaert. This was awesome, man. Awesome. I don't know how he bloody did it. Shahbazyan was destroying him for a lot of that fight. It was a huge comeback victory. So Shahbazyan was cutting off the cage incredibly well, strong strikes, strong body kicks. Shahbazyan clearly won the first round, and he was absolutely winning the second. He was sprawling against the takedowns well. Like, Meerschaert was clearly desperate to get the takedowns, but Shahbazyan was sprawling very nicely. He was defending them really nicely. And then Meerschaert copped that body punch, which hurt him. It absolutely hurt him. He went to the ground, and there was a lot of ground and pound from Shahbazyan, but I don't know how he managed to survive that. If the fight was called, I would have been fine with that because he kept getting copped with strikes, and probably Edmen Shahbazyan was tired by the end of that exchange, and he was surprised that Meerschaert managed to survive because I thought it was this close to being called. But not only does he survive that, he actually gets that takedown finally, and he secures in the arm triangle, and he submits Shahbazyan. How the hell did he do that? Not only how the hell did he get out of that initial, body punch and then the ground and pound, but then he goes on to get the takedown and submits him. Beautiful. One of the best comeback victories I've ever seen in the UFC. So this was really impressive from Meerschaert, but also Edmen Shahbazyan, he got caught. He does need to work on, you know what? That's not fair. He was doing very well with the takedown defense, but once he was taken down, Meerschaert just had him. And even the commentator said this, once he gets taken down, it's going to be very dangerous for Shahbazyan, and ultimately he got submitted. So he might need to work on that, but ultimately, Meerschaert with the incredible comeback victory. And as I said, overall, this was a very, very fun UFC fight night. I liked all the fights that were on display, at least in the main card. I haven't watched the rest of the fights on the rest of the card, but I will go on to watch them. But yeah, keep around tomorrow to see Rob's opinions, at least on that Jared Cannonier and Caio Borralho fight. I'm really interested to see what you guys have to say when it comes to whether Caio Borralho is a genuine title contender and whether he should be fighting Dricus du Plessis next. And also, how would he go against Dricus? Because at least right now, I think he needs another win. I don't think he deserves a title opportunity. Again, Sean Strickland's ahead of him, the winner of Rob Whittaker, and Khamzat Chimaev is ahead of him. But even if he got that fight, I think Dricus du Plessis ragdolls him. Let me know what you think, and until next time, this has been Johnny. Please take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video.